Well, it is a pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon. My job this afternoon is to talk, my role is to talk about women and business. And before you in the room think, boy, that woman really drew the short straw today, I am very excited about this because women in business matters. It matters to have more women in senior roles in the workforce. It matters to have more women working. It matters because more diverse leadership teams are better leadership teams. They lead to higher returns for companies, lower risk, lower volatility, more client focus, more long-term focus, more innovation, better stockholder returns, and lower gender pay disparity. Nothing bad happens when women are in senior leadership roles alongside men. So getting more women into senior leadership roles matters for all women, it matters for all of us here, it matters to all families, and it matters to our economic prosperity. But as many of you know, we've actually stalled on this front in corporate America over the past decade. And in the industry that I've come from, Wall Street, we've actually gone backwards. Yes, that's right, we've gone backwards. We took an industry that went into the downturn white, male, and middle-aged, and we've come out whiter, maler, and middle-ageder. Now, this is where I always like to note, I love middle-aged white guys. I've been married to a couple of them myself. But as a country, we took that risk and we doubled down on that bet. And we did it in an industry that we could probably all agree, Wall Street financial services, that could use lower risk, that could use a greater long-term perspective. So this is a fairness issue. It's not just a yuppie woman's issue. It's a fairness issue because of the gender pay gap. It's a fairness issue. You know, we women today making 77 cents on the dollar to every man are working for free for the rest of the year. In financial services, it's a fairness issue because this country deserves a financial services industry that's safer and with lower risk. Now, I will acknowledge, and all of you in the room know this, that if getting more women to the top of these companies were easy, it would be easy. There's no one answer, there's no one right thing to do. Now, I know many of you now think I'm going to start to talk about some of these challenges, and I am. But I'm not going to talk about the issue of overt discrimination today. Some of you may think I'm now going to talk about the issue of subtle discrimination, but I'm not going to do that. Some of you may think I'm now going to talk about how we women do 3 times the child care and double the housework of our husbands. But I'm not going to talk about that either. I'm actually going to talk about another important issue that actually gets very little attention in this debate. Woo. I'm going to talk about hair and makeup. You're welcome. And I'm actually totally serious about this. This insight came to me some years ago. I was a CFO of Citigroup, a position of some import. I had gone on a trip with a handful of gentlemen. I was senior to all of them. We were in Brazil. We had, as happens when you're going out with clients, stayed out quite late the night before, and as happened, had a very early flight the next morning. So we all came down in the morning, and all the guys said, as guys say, I am so tired. I just woke up 15 minutes ago. I said, honey, I've been up for an hour putting this together. Now, let's make a simplifying assumption. Let's assume that all of you are lower maintenance than I am. Probably a pretty fair assumption. Let's assume that your hair and makeup only takes 15 minutes a day. No big deal, 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes a day is an hour and 15 minutes a week. is 5 hours a month, is 60 hours a year. 1 full work week a year, check my math, on hair and makeup, and I haven't even shaved my legs yet. So the challenges that we women face in moving to the top in business are multifold, and they exist even in those little pockets of time that we don't talk about. One of those challenges is the standards of perfection to which we hold ourselves. I tell you, it's exhausting. And the great thing about coming here today is that we get to hear about how such enormously successful women, what they've done and what they've thrown away to reach the heights that they've reached and the accomplishments that they've earned. So we have the opportunity today to learn from their success. I'm going to talk about something different, however. No lessons from my success. Yeah, I did okay. I was a research analyst. I was a CEO of Sanford Bernstein. I ran Smith Barney. I was a CFO of Citi. I ran Merrill. My team and I were charged with turning around Smith Barney after it stumbled in the research scandal. And my team and I were charged with turning around Merrill Lynch after it stumbled in the subprime scandal and Bank of America bought it and it was struggling, imploding. I spent my life as a female in a very male world. And perhaps no surprise, I was most often on the cleanup crew. But instead of taking you through all of that, I'm going to focus on my failures. Because what Sallie, great name by the way, was too kind to note is that I've been fired twice. And it's been on the front page of the Wall Street Journal twice. So I want to tell you what I learned from each of my firings. But first, just a bit of background, a bit of my story. It was 2008. I was running Smith Barney. The markets were crashing. We had sold products to individual investors that we had advertised as low risk, but they weren't. Our team, the analysis they did, indicated that in a bad market, those investments would go down 8 cents on the dollar. Well, we had a bad market, and they went down 100 cents on the dollar. I'll tell you, I looked and looked and looked. I can't tell you the hours and hours I put into this, trying to find out if the team had done anything illegal or unethical. But what I came up with is that we'd helped our clients lose money the old-fashioned way. We were stupid. The big print said the products were low risk. The small print said the clients could lose everything. So I advocated to my boss, the CEO, that we should share part of the pain and partially reimburse our clients for that loss. My CEO disagreed. So I said yes, and he said no. And I said yes, and he said no. And I said yes, and he said no. And I said yes, and he stopped returning my phone calls. And I said yes, and he stopped taking meetings. And I said yes, and he stopped looking at me in bigger meetings. The board of directors found out about this, asked the two of us to come and speak to them about it. I said yes, he said no. The board said yes, and I later lost my job. Now, my Bank of America story is a bit less dramatic than that. I was between jobs after my Citi firing. One morning, I got a call from the Bank of America CEO asking me if I could come in and turn around Merrill Lynch, the wealth management business, the thundering herd, which had been shrinking rapidly since they had bought it. He said, look, Sallie, coming into Bank of America is tricky. It's a complex organization. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay here for 2 years to oversee your entrance to the company, to ensure that it goes smoothly. He announced his retirement, or his resignation, less than 2 months later. So I offered to leave so the new guy could have his own team in place. He asked me to stay. 2 years later, with the Merrill Lynch wealth management business turned around and ahead of plan, they thanked me for my efforts, they reorganized the management team, and they sent me home. So what did I learn? I have a lot of lessons. My goodness, I've got a lot of lessons, but we don't have a lot of time. So let me do this. Let me share with you 5 of the most important ones that I've taken away. First of all, number 1, if it comes down to your job or your ethics, choose your ethics every time. You can always find another job. I often get this after, as I talk to smaller groups about it. People say, look, but ethics are gray. This is okay, this is okay, this is okay. When does it get not okay? How do you know? And for all of us, I think we have to find out how we know. And for me, it's my stomach. My stomach tells me every time when I can't eat, something's wrong. The second, though, is that occasionally my stomach lets me down. And I ask myself the question, I don't know the answer to whether something crosses my line of ethics or not. And so I have it's a very simple test that I'll share with you, which is I ask myself what to do, myself what to do, myself what to do. If I then turn it and ask what the person I would like to be would do, what the ideal version of myself would do, I find I come to the right answer every single time. Simple exercise, important result. Second, in business, a sponsor matters. Notice I didn't say mentor. A mentor's good. A mentor is someone who's there to answer your question and advise you. A sponsor is a super mentor, someone who deeply believes in your ability and who fights for you. Fights for that raise for you, fights for that promotion for you, fights for that new project for you, fights against your getting fired. We women tend to be over-mentored and under-sponsored. And in the course of my career, I've had sponsors at Bernstein. My sponsor took years off my career trajectory, and I haven't had sponsors. There was no one in that room at Bank of America to say, hey, how about we keep the lady who's ahead of plan and growing the business? When you've got a sponsor, you can lean in because someone has your ankles. And when you don't, if you lean in too far, you smack your face. Third, your network matters. And research shows that we ladies don't have nearly the network that the gentlemen do. It's one of the reasons, it's the reason, the guys start to pull ahead of us in their 30s on promotions. It's not ability, it's not hard work, you've seen it, it's network. Did you know that network has been cited as the #1 unwritten rule of success in business? And did you know that your next business opportunity is more likely to come from a loose connection, somebody you just talk to a couple times a year, than from a close colleague or a friend? That's because that loose connection is one of many seeds you plant that can be the difference between hearing about an opportunity, a research breakthrough, a board position, a new job, a startup that's threatening your company, than not. And that's in part, I should say, well, maybe my loose connections I get more business opportunities from because they don't know me as well as my friends do. And that's actually not the reason, I don't think, actually. But it's because you and your friends, you and your close colleagues, you're trafficking in the same information. If they know it, you know it. Instead, it's a broader network that brings you new information. And that's why what we're doing here today, coming together today, matters. Because in part, the research has showed, like it or not, we're more comfortable networking with our own gender. And that's why I recently bought 85 Broads, the amusingly named professional women's network, 32,000 women strong, across industries and around the world. Appropriately enough, I came to invest in 85 Broads through networking. I sat on the plane next to Arthur Levitt, the former chair of the SEC. He turned to me. I turned to him. I said, "You're Arthur Levitt." He said, I said, "Sallie Krawcheck." We talked for a while. He introduced me later to Steve Feldman, who introduced me to Savneet Singh, who introduced me to Nick Beim. You get the point. 9 introductions later, I met the woman who owned 85 Broads. Now, what particularly compelled me about networking and the business is that we found our members who receive both networking, the benefits of networking, as well as education, leave their jobs and leave the workforce at substantially lower rates than average. In other words, Networking makes them and you more successful in your career because of the power of those loose connections in education. 4, the companies that I see winning as you're thinking about what companies you're working on are the companies that embrace diversity, that don't try to turn us into men, that allow the beauty of diversity by all of us being different come together. They don't provide lip service to flexibility. They don't say we've got it, but then when a woman takes it or a man takes it, they can't come back. Instead, they provide flexibility without shame. They will get the benefit of our hard work and difference of perspective. My 5th lesson, and my most important one, people sometimes ask me, how do you do it? You've had success, you've had failure. How do you get back up? I had someone tell me, for goodness sake, you're a weeble. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. For me, and this is important, it's the power of gratitude. I don't want to take anything away from the hard work I've put in over the years, but I do recognize it's only an accident of nature that I was born when I was born, to the parents to whom I was born, that all of us were born into these circumstances at this time to have these opportunities. I mean, my goodness, how cool is it that we're all here together today? How cool is that? I am so grateful that my parents went into debt to pay for my education, and I'm grateful for everything that's followed. I was grateful when I was at Bernstein. I was grateful when I was at Smith Barney. I was grateful when I was at Merrill. I was grateful on the days I got fired. Look, Dad, I'm on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. How great is that? Final lesson, one last bonus lesson before I leave. Gratitude is good. Sometimes a big glass of wine or 2 helps a lot too. Thank you all.